On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, it's been a couple years in the wilderness, but tonight the Toronto Raptors finally return to the NBA in earnest.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, October the 22nd, opening night for your Toronto Raptors, the 12th opening night I have covered as I've covered this team. I'm, of course, your host, Sean Woodley. I have been into the 10th season of this podcast. It's crazy. Time flies. And thrilled to be here with you, as always, to cover another Toronto Raptors season. You can find all of my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast, 100% free to join, as always. Great time to join the listener community. Not only are we talking basketball, we're talking Blue Jays. We're talking all kinds of things over there in the Discord. We'd love to see you become part of our listener family. Go do it. On today's show, it's opening night. It's a look ahead to the season that the Toronto Raptors are set to embark upon as they, for the first time in a couple years, feel like an active participant in the NBA. I'm very excited about that. We'll talk about why I'm just thrilled for the return of competitive basketball. Even if the ceiling ain't high, you know what? F a ceiling sometimes, man. There's a lot to be said for a nice high floor. We're also going to get into some quick optimistic predictions for the Toronto Raptors, stuff I feel pretty good about actually coming true this season. And then we will get into my quick rapid fire ranking of the teams in the Eastern Conference 1 through 15 as I see them going into this year ahead of tonight's game against the Atlanta Hawks down in Atlanta. Let's start off, though, with just, my joy that the Toronto Raptors are back and trying at least to play competitive, serious basketball. The last couple seasons have been a slog, man. It has been not the easiest time to be, a daily podcast host covering this team. It's not been an easy time to be a fan. It's been grim stuff. You kind of toil through 82 games of knowing it's heading nowhere. In both cases, I mean, before the 23-24 season, it was kind of declared, Pascal Siakam's not going to be around this whole year. And there were some moments of that season that were super fun. The post-OG trade window where they had Siakam and Quickley and Barrett and Barnes looking really good, for a fleeting moment there. The best week of the last 3 years of Raptors basketball, I'd argue. That gave way to like a month of pretty fun ball with Scotty Barnes post-Siakam trade as kind of the lead dude on the team before he got hurt. Pirtle got hurt. Quickley had, some injury stuff, and Barrett had some personal stuff. And it was just like a pretty miserable end to that season. And again, it was headed nowhere. Like the last 20 games, it was just like, we're going to try to lose as much as possible here to game the lottery standings. And ultimately, they didn't even get their pick that year because of the pick that was at the door to the San Antonio Spurs and the Pirtle trade. It was just like that whole, convey or not convey debate that was truly exhausting that dominated that back part of the year. The following year, last season, they said from the jump, we're probably not going to win a lot of games. And boy, did they not. They were 9-31 to start the season. The second half was nice and they made some strides, but we knew it was going nowhere. We knew that in the last 20 games, they were going to, carve new pathways towards attempting to lose basketball games. And they very much did that. Didn't do it terribly successfully because the rest of the league was just that bad at the bottom. But this year, the Raptors are seemingly back in the mix, in the conversation, in the lexicon, not maybe to the extent that they used to be back during the peak of the Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan days. I don't think anyone thinks the Raptors are going to go be conference finalists or anything this season. They're not going to be one of the big ticket teams. I think they have like 2 national TV games all year. But for the people who watch the league and observe, they're not going to be like an instant, I'm not watching that tonight, because they're going to be playing competitive games. They're going to be probably in the mix in the Eastern Conference playoff conversation. If that doesn't happen, then something's probably gone wrong. I think there's too much talent here for them not to be at least in the conversation for a top 6 seed until late in the year. And I just think it's so refreshing to come into a season with like stakes and expectations. And it's not like the expectations are sky high. I still think this is not a season where the joy is at risk of being stolen by the expectations, right? There are some teams where you go in and it's like, well, it's title or bust, or it's conference finals or bust. And that puts this sort of stress upon the whole season. For the Raptors, I don't think that is there. I think it's kind of a happy medium of we get to watch fun, cool, interesting basketball again, where the team is actually trying to optimize its win total and, figure out ways to, plot against other teams to affect winning in a way that just didn't last year. It was just kind of, they were this lifeless, inert object that other teams just kind of played against and beat or did not beat. But the Raptors weren't doing a whole lot to sort of scheme around what was happening night to night. I think when you're trying to actually win games, that does take place, and it's so much more interesting to watch and talk about on a daily basis. I've said for a long time covering this show, I'm way better at covering a good team. If you are a recent, adopter of the podcast in the last couple of seasons, get ready. I have a lot of fun talking about a good team, and I can get into the weeds, X's and O's wise, in a way that you just can't when the team is not trying to do X's and O's things interestingly, as was the case over the last couple of years. And I think to go back to the stakes thing, I mean, this is what sports are about, man. It's about like having a goal and hoping you reach it. And it's not the Toronto Blue Jays making the World Series and kind of having that huge uproarious release of joy and pent up energy. Like, that's not the case with the Raptors. That they obviously have a title in the pretty recent rear view that's keeping us all satiated a little bit here still. Some more than others. Some are thirsty for that next one. Fair enough. I'm still, swaddled in my championship gear at night, feeling good. And I'm just kind of in the mode of I want to see good competitive basketball. But there are stakes this year, right? Like there is some element of like, they better get this right, at least to some degree this year. Otherwise, where does it go from here? And that's part of the fun, right? Part of the fun of following a sports team is riding the ups and downs and feeling the pain when things don't go well. The last couple of seasons were just this sort of numbness of, well, that loss didn't matter. That win was fun, but that didn't matter. Like, none of this means anything. None of the data they're accruing here means anything going forward. None of the tape is usable to watch to kind of predict what's going to happen next and analyze. And that's all out the window this season, as they are like very clearly from top down unified in their desire to try. Last year, part of the joy of last season, there were some moments of fun, and it was mostly derived from, well, look at all these young dudes flying around trying really hard all the time. That was fun. It made for some exciting losses where they were close late and then couldn't quite get it over the finish line, but you felt like, oh, there's something there. That was, fleeting and mostly reserved for the first half of the year, as the second half very much devolved into not try ball. But, even had moments like Jacoby Walter pulling out a hilarious win when the team was clearly trying to not win in Orlando with the buzzer beater and stuff like that. The young guys trying hard really was a lot of fun. And I think, that even bled into like Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett. Like, those guys brought it. They gave a damn. But it's tough to have that mean anything when there's this sort of separation between the intentions of the players on the floor who are never going to try to tank. Coaching staff, I think, is kind of the middleman between the players and the front office. They can't put up the front like they're trying to lose, but they can press buttons and make substitutions and make decisions that don't exactly optimize the odds of winning. They stuck with the same defense basically the entire season, didn't really try to adapt or evolve in games, and that was by design. Same goes for how they operated with their rotations down the stretch, where they pulled out their good players in crunch time and trying to, put the fingers on the scales a little bit to force a loss that didn't always come. This year, there's a unification between the desires of the front office, the coaching staff, and the players to want to win basketball games. And I don't know, call me a romantic. I think that's a beautiful thing in a competitive sports league that, we just have been deprived of the last couple of years. This is just like, again, it's not going to be an incredible basketball team. They're not going to go win 58 games, but watching a team that's actually trying for something, trying to be competitive night in, night out, there's a lot of joy in that. And yeah, this team doesn't have like the highest ceiling in the world. I also don't think we know yet what this iteration is going to look like 2, 3, 4 years down the line and how that ceiling might change. But I do think the floor is quite high, and I think that is a pretty good place to come in. When it comes to that ceiling, like in those next few years, like, again, that is the stakes at play this season, right? Learning about this team in a way that can inform what happens next. And, is it something where, good things happen this year, guys improve trade value, improve their sort of standing within the league, just look better as basketball players in a context where the team is trying. Like, all that stuff very much on the table this year. And the way you sort of view the roster and the team and the build now probably stands to be very different 6 months from now once the season's over and we've gone through a year of them actually trying to be a real team. Not to mention, if you make the playoffs, you learn so much about your team in there that helps inform what comes next. This is why I would much rather this path of shooting for something in the 40s wins wise, as opposed to praying to the lottery gods and hoping they bail you out, which I feel like has been kind of deemed the only way to build a team the right way in recent years. And I just don't think that's true. There's plenty of evidence to the contrary that says there are other pathways to building a good basketball team. And, quote unquote, building from the middle, it gets like your nose turned up at and all that stuff. But like the Raptors have done this. The Raptors built from the middle and won a championship as a result of it. The Indiana Pacers were in the finals last year, one of the best stories we've ever seen in pro sports in recent memory. And they were a build from the middle team, have always been a build from the middle team. I think there's room for different types of builds, different pathways. And just because what's next for this Raptors team isn't totally clear right now, is they have crowded books and they have a lot of dudes under contract and the way it all fits is very uncertain, doesn't mean it's going to be viewed this way in 6 months' time after some actual basketball games have been played with these players together and more information's been gleaned. And look, things could go truly miserably. That's not lost on me. I'm not a fool. I'm not blind. Brandon Ingram could not stay on the floor. Jakob Poeltl could take some knocks, and the backup center position could continue to be a sore spot if Mamu's not able to come through, or Colin Murray-Boyles and Scotty Barnes can't carry the load as small ball fives for long stretches. We could see the stagnation or the decline and the regression of some of the young guys who showed some stuff last year. Maybe Jonathan Mobo's just not a guy. Maybe Jamal Shedd's just not a guy. Maybe Grady Dick's just not a guy, right? Like Jacoby Walter. None of these things are guaranteed. The fit with the starters remains, I think, fine to curious, and we'll see how it goes over the course of the season. It's not perfect by any means. Like, there's a lot of ways this goes off the rails. At the same time, I think there's just too much talent here for it to go too far off the rails to be such like a disaster that leaves you completely unsure as to what comes next. So I think we're going to learn a lot this year. I think we're going to get a lot of sort of things revealed about what guys are, what they can be, where they can't fit in, and sort of what comes next as a result. And I think next summer we're going to have a much clearer picture about what comes next. But in the meantime, man, enjoy it. 82 games of regular season ball. Like I'm a regular season piggy. I've always been that. I've always been a champion of thinking the regular season should count for more and people should care about it more. We spend 6 months of our lives every year watching this stuff night in, night out. And I think this year we're actually going to get rewarded for that commitment in a way the last couple of years. It's been a real slog, and it's really just been the sickos who have been in there watching these games and the 20-point blowouts every single night and still riding with the team. I think, this is going to be a return to being just, again, back a part of the regular NBA, not trying to game the lottery system, but instead trying to win games. That sounds pretty good to me. Even if there's downside potential, again, all part of the fun of watching a team with stakes and stuff that matters at play. We'll come back on the other side. We're going to get into some optimistic Raptors micro predictions. I have some stuff that we've covered a lot of predictions so far going into the year. I got a few more things I want to get off my chest. And, I'm going to twinge it with a little toxic optimism because that is the way I roll on this here show. We'll come back and do that in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is the single best way to play daily fantasy sports. And right now, you can go and do it with this year's football season. Have a ton of fun. Prize Picks, it's where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. Ain't that a ton of fun? It's super quick. You can make your lineup in under a minute, and Prize Picks just added stacks. So if you want to ride with a player, you can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. That is a ton of fun as well. You can do that with a mobile quarterback. Maybe you have a high catch receiving running back on your fantasy team you feel good about that you want to go do a stack with. It's all there for you to peruse. And they also have the injury reboot feature, which if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. That is pretty darn sweet. And it works across all sports too. The basketball season's up and running in the NBA. You can go and play Prize Picks there as well. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Today's show is also brought to you by Built. Nobody likes paying rent. I don't like it. You don't like it. Nobody likes it. But if you must, you might as well get something for it, right? That is where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay your rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. I rented for a long time before buying a home a couple years ago. And let me tell you, I really wish Built was around while I was doing that, because it would have been great to get something in return for all that money I was sending to my landlord every month. Built has created that system for you. You can turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use that link so they know that we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Back at it here on your season preview, opening day edition of Locked On Raptors here on a Wednesday. And I've got some rapid fire predictions I want to rattle through pertaining to the Toronto Raptors specifically. We'll get to my quick glance at the Eastern Conference and how I see it shaking out this year as well. But let's get into some stuff with the Raptors. A couple player specific things, and then just sort of like team wide things I got an eye on that I think are just going to kind of come through this year. And again, I am the toxic positivity czar here in the Toronto Raptors media sphere. That's my brand. I can't shake it now. And you know what? When it's the first day of the NBA season, why not have a little optimism, right? You don't need to come in and be like, oh, I think they're going to be the 10th seed. And that's no fun. Like, I don't know. If you're wrong, like about predicting an optimistic, hopeful, fun, good season, then whatever. But if you're right, it feels pretty damn good. And so, yeah, I lean optimistic early on. That's kind of my deal. And, for a long time, that very much paid off for me covering this team. It really was a good corner to be on for, 7-8 years there, where every time I was like, yeah, the good thing is going to happen. The good thing usually happened. And I felt like a genius at the end. Been a bit of a fallow period for that in recent years. But this year, baby, it's all back on track. We've returned to the, just the Raptors, not of old, because the Kyle DeMar teams were incredible, but the Raptors just like trying to be good and winning basketball games. I think it's reason to feel optimistic about some stuff. Okay, so quickly Immanuel Quickley. My first prediction is I think this year is going to be like a really serious like value rehab season for Immanuel Quickley. I think it's a good situation for him. He's not going to be overburdened creatively, right? Like he's not going to have to be on the ball every single time down the floor. Yes, he is technically their lead guard, but this team has a lot of sources of creation. And I just think he's going to be able to play that sort of on-ball, off-ball chameleon role really well. We know he's a damn good shooter. I think he's going to get a ton of really clean, easy three-point looks playing in this offense. We've already seen it, right? They're trying to weaponize him flying off the ball, coming off the screens, sort of using the leverage other players have to create good looks for him. And I think his leverage is also going to create good looks for others, right? Like the threat of his shooting in sort of inverted pick and roll actions, flare screens, ghost screens, stuff like that. Like you run him in split actions with Scotty Barnes at the elbow or whatever. Like his threat of shooting makes defenses think, and that is going to open up opportunities for him and others. And I just think, as stupid as it is, like injured equals bad in a lot of people's brains. And I think last year it was not good for Quickley's rep. Of course, he was, not very good in the first part of the year. I thought played pretty well in the back part of the season. And I also think he doesn't get enough credit for how well he played in the back part of 23-24. RJ Barrett gets all the plaudits for how well he played after the trade back then. But I think Quickley showed a lot during that stretch as well. And look, there's some stuff that's got to come around. The interior scoring, the floater, that's got to come back. I think he's made strides with his handle and not picking up his dribbles too soon and stuff like that. But you still run into the odd jump pass situation where he's kind of, oh God, I'm in the air, I've got to make a decision. And he doesn't always make the right one. He's not a top-end elite point guard in the NBA. He's also not paid like that. And we have to stop pretending he is. He makes $32.5 million a year, which going forward is going to be just basic fine starter money if it isn't already. He is like the 50th highest paid player in the league right now, and that's only going to go down over the life of this contract. We have to stop acting as though he's been paid as some max contract guy, because that's just not the reality. A few years ago, 32.5 mil, that's right in the max zone. Not the case anymore. And I think he's just going to provide exactly what this team needs from that sort of combo guard who does some creation, does some off-ball scoring. I think is a fine defender. I think he gets a lot of crap for defense when I don't think at that position, there's nothing wrong with what he does defensively. He's a good shot contester. He can get into lanes with his length, and I think he's done a pretty good job with the high pickup point pressure stuff the Raptors ask of their guards. Not terribly worried there. And yeah, I just think it's going to be a year where, at the very least, at come season's end, the conversation about Quickley isn't going to be, wow, this guy's an unmovable albatross contract who's nowhere near the value that he's getting paid. I think it's going to be more of a, wow, like IQ plus some young guys and all the picks the Raptors have as a real trade offer for an upgrade is like a very credible trade offer you could throw out there to a team. And that's not to say they're just going to go trade IQ this summer either. Maybe he plays himself into the long-term vision, even more than he already seems to be, considering how much they paid him. And that would be great. I would love that. And I think we will see a really effective version of IQ this year. But I do think, like I talked earlier about the sort of rehab value that just like playing competitive ball can bring. I think Quickley has been in a pretty bad situation basically since he arrived with the Raptors. He hasn't even played that many games with the Raptors. What is it, like 60 games he's played as a member of the team across 2 fractured seasons where the team wasn't trying in either of them? Like, we just haven't gotten a full view of what Quickley looks like on a team that's trying, same as we haven't gotten a full view of most of these guys on a team that's trying for years now. And I think he's going to have that value rehabbed pretty significantly as a result. Next one I got here is RJ Barrett does not get traded this season. I know he's the sort of popular guy, and I've talked about this as well, right? Like he is very obviously, of the core guys on the team, the least tethered to this team long-term because of the contractual realities of it all. But I think at this point, he looks like he's going to fit in well on offense with this team. We'll see about the defense. Obviously, it's always going to be the limiting factor. And I know there's the sort of luxury tax boogeyman that hangs over this team. I think, yes, the easy thing to do is move RJ and, shed some money that way and get under. It's not actually the easy thing to do. The easy thing is something to do with Ochai Agbaji. They're not that far over the tax. You could even swap Ochai for a cheaper player and you're under the tax and you're fine. I'd bet on that being what happens as the Raptors like luxury tax dodging move this season. I think moving a player of RJ's, contractual value in season is going to be a little harder. And I also just think like they're not going to feel super burdened to move him because I think it's going to look fine. Like I don't think it's going to be incredible. I don't think it's going to be a perfect fit all the time. There are going to be nights where he can't finish at the rim or the free throws aren't falling and it feels pretty dire. But I think ultimately his fit within the offense seems to be pretty good as he's streamlining his role. And so I think at the very least, we'll see him play out this entire season with the team. They'll go in, see what they have in the playoffs, if they can make it with him on the team. And then if he does get traded, I think it's probably next summer at like the draft, with some draft assets from the Raptors and added in as they look for an upgrade as he's an expiring contract, which is a pretty interesting thing as well. And hey, you want to couple the RJ plus IQ salaries and some picks, then you can get really interesting with the types of targets you can go and try to chase down just salary wise, right? So yeah, RJ does not get traded this season. That is a quick prediction from me. Next, I've got transition dominance. I think this team is going to return to the top spot in the league rankings in transition frequency this year. They were 3rd last year. They're the 1st year before. And I think they'll probably challenge for like the all-time record for highest transition frequency. In the preseason, they ran 23.8% of their possessions in transition. That is crazy high. It was like 2.5 percentage points higher than number 2 in the preseason. And again, I think if you can pull anything from the preseason, sort of desired play style is probably the thing. And the Raptors very much were running with everything they had at basically every opportunity. I think they're going to be a really good transition team. And I think they're going to find the efficiency back a little bit too. Maybe not at like top of the league levels, but I think you couple in Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett filling lanes, Immanuel Quickley as like a trailer shooter. Same with Brandon Ingram. I just think they've got a lot in terms of transition juice, and they're going to run a ton. They're going to force a lot of steals with the way they play. And so, yeah, I think they lead the league in transition frequency. I think that makes them, kind of a darling of, little sickos who like to watch fun basketball over the course of the season. I know they're not very high in most people's league pass rankings coming into the year, but transition ball is fun, and teams that get out and run are a blast. And I think the Raptors are really going to kind of live that this year. And we'll see how the half-court offense comes along. I think it'll be better than it has been in the past, but I do think the transition is going to be where this team really butters its bread. And that's a fun thing to watch. Shot quality. I think their shot quality is going to decrease a smidge, and this has been a shot quality team over the last couple of years under Darko Rajakovic. Their shot chart looks great. They get a ton of looks at the rim. They have a decent number of corner threes. Above the break, not quite there. I think they will take a lot more above the break threes this year to kind of improve the shot quality, but I do think they probably exchange some of those corner threes or some of those rim looks for mid-range shots with Brandon Ingram on the team now. Scotty Barnes takes a lot of shots from the mid-range. I don't think it's going to be a bad thing. I actually think they're going to be a much more efficient team than they have been in the past. The shot quality has done nothing for them. Per clean the glass last year, they were like the third best team in the league by shot quality in terms of what you'd expect their effective field goal percentage to be. And by season's end, they were like 27th in actual effective field goal percentage, maybe 29th. They were awful. I think they'll be far more close to middle of the pack in terms of efficiency and maybe like top 10-ish as opposed to like top 3 in shot quality this year. And then my last prediction is I think this team is going to destroy bad teams. I think one of the marks of a good team is whether or not you take care of business loudly against the teams that stink. And that was always one of the hallmarks of the Larry DeMar teams. I was looking back. The 2017-18 Raptors were 35-2 against sub-500 teams. The championship season, they were 36-4. Now, I don't think they're going to reach those heights this year, but I do think just the way they're built, their try-hard ethos, their depth, the quality of guys they're going to have across 48 minutes with 2 to 3 starters always on the floor, I think they're probably going to flirt with like an 80 to 85% win percentage against the bad teams in the league. And that's pretty fun. That's a really easy way to sort of build up your win total. It's just beat the piss out of the bad teams. We'll see how they hold up against the good ones, but I think against the stinkers, they're going to win pretty easily most nights. We'll come back on the other side. We're going to do my rapid fire predictions for the Eastern Conference to round out the show. 15 teams in order. I'll run through how I see this conference playing out as Eastern Conference ball gets started tonight after the Western Conference owned Tuesday night. And boy, oh boy, was that Thunder Rockets game an absolute blast. But in the less good conference, I've got some thoughts. We'll get to those coming up in just a sec. Today's show is brought to you by Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. When it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no online waiting rooms, no awkward in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rougiette, RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's Rougiette.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know that we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. Wrapping things up here on your Wednesday edition of Locked On Raptors. Raptors Hawks tonight. Tons of fun. Also a note, the Raptors home opener on Friday. The start time has been moved back an hour to 6:30 p.m. just because of the World Series going down in Toronto. Heard of it? Crazy stuff. 6:30 for that home opener Friday. That just got passed along by the Raptors media folks. Also, next Wednesday's game against the Rockets will be at 6:30 as well. Even though I believe the World Series is on the road that night, I think they just want to make sure people can get home and watch the end of the game, I guess. Either way, rapid fire East predictions. I did this in kind of newsletter form last year. I will do it here in podcast form and just kind of run 1 through 15 in the Eastern Conference, my quick take on every team and where I think they're going to end up in the East hierarchy this season. I've got it basically tiered out. There's one tier at the top of 2 teams. There's like a solo tier of 1 team at 3. I'd say 4 through 7 or 8 are kind of a bunch of teams. And then I've got like 8 through 11 is a group of teams, maybe 12. And then there's the real dregs at the bottom in the last 2 or 3 teams. But let's get into just the 1 through 15 ranking. Number 1, I have Cleveland. Regular season wins cheat code. Less sure about their playoff equity. We'll see how it all works, but they are going to win a lot of games again because they got a formula for it down. Number 2, second seed, the New York Knicks. I don't know if their bench additions really matter all that much. Like, Yabu's cool, I guess. He's fine. He's like a nice 7th or 8th guy. Jordan Clarkson feels a little over the hill and probably way overhyped, but because it's New York and all that. But their starters are awesome. Deuce McBride's awesome. Mitchell Robinson, if he's starting, I think is going to help that team make a lot more sense. Josh Hart off the bench is a big deal. Rest of the conference is not very good. They are very good. Number 3, I have the Orlando Magic, kind of third by default. Going to be a nasty defensive team, even if Jalen Suggs can't stay on the floor, which is a real thing with him. Kind of sucks. Little skeptical of their center rotation. I've not been a huge Wendell Carter Jr. guy necessarily, but Desmond Bane's going to be exactly what they needed in the half court. We'll see if it all fits. I don't think it's like a surefire thing. This team's going to go and blow away the league with 50-plus wins, but their defense is going to be awesome, and I think their offense will at least be passable. And so, yeah, Orlando third, I guess. Number 4, And this team, they've just risen up my rankings over the last little while. Even this week, various shows I've recorded, I've kind of risen them a little bit every time I've talked about them. The Milwaukee Bucks I have at 4. They just keep on climbing for me, and I can't believe I'm here, but it's just because I trust Giannis more than anybody else in this conference, and Giannis plus shooting is a regular season formula that works. If he gets hurt at all, they're screwed. That roster is terrible without him, but Giannis is great. This is the start of, by the way, the tier that I would heap the Raptors into as well. It's a pretty big tier. Number 5, I have the Atlanta Hawks. They're good. I worry about the Jalen Johnson and Kristaps Porzingis health stuff, but they're good, I guess. I don't know. I have to see it. I have to see Trae Young play winning basketball to really believe it. But we'll put them 5th because they are pretty talented. 6th, they have the Raptors. Too many good players to not be pretty good, I think. And I'm bullish on their regular season wins formula of 2 to 3 starters always on the floor, trying hard, forcing a bunch of turnovers, being a nuisance night to night. Not going to be an easy team to game plan for. And they're just going to kind of spring themselves onto teams sometimes. This year's version of the Detroit Pistons, I think, is very much on the table for the Raptors. Speaking of the Pistons, I have them at 7. Biggest regression candidate in the league to me. Karis LeVert is worse than Dennis Schroeder was for them last year. Duncan Robinson is much worse than the version of Malik Beasley the Pistons had last year, who was one of the best shooters we've literally ever seen, and we're not making a big enough deal about it. I'm trying to make a big enough deal about it, but I don't feel like anyone else is. They're going to be fine long-term, but I think their offense could get kind of gross this year. Jaden Ivey's already hurt. There's spacing between Ron Holland and Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren's going to be kind of grim. And I just don't like watching Cade Cunningham slowly plod his way to effective half-court offense all that much, and I think it just could be kind of a grind. We'll see. And they're not going to surprise teams anymore either. Like, everyone's going to know Detroit brings it. I think 7th for Detroit for me is where I'd have them. And I wouldn't be surprised if they even fell below this next team, which is the Miami Heat, kind of the end of this tier of teams for me. Not having Tyler Hero early on is going to put them in a huge hole that they'll probably scratch and claw out of in the second half of the year because Eric Spoelstra is a wizard. They got good players. I don't think Norm Powell is going to have the season he had last year with the Clippers because, my God, that was a crazy outlier year for a 30-something dude. But yeah, like, they're the Heat. They'll be around. They'll be in the play-in probably. I have them at 8. They could be 7th. They could be as high as 6 if Hero comes back early. But I don't know. Don't love the mix there all that much. Number 9, I have the Sixers. I don't know what the hell to do with this team. They could be 4th if everything goes right. But can you fathom a world in which everything goes right for the Sixers? So splitting the difference between 4th and 13th, I'll say 9th. Number 10, I have the Indiana Pacers. Yeah, no Tyrese Halliburton. Pascal Siakam, we've seen, can give you a pretty decent floor. I think Andrew Nembhard will have a pretty good season, even if he'll be a little bit overexposed as a number 1. They're going to play too hard and be too competent, and Rick Carlisle's too good of a coach for them to truly fall out of the play-in and into the high lottery. And if the basketball gods are just, like, they'll lose in the play-in and they will win the lottery because the Pacers are cool. They've been built super well, and it's good sort of karmic justice after the Tyrese Halliburton thing. That would be a really fun lottery winner. Number 11, the Boston Celtics. I'm simply not buying that a team with a front court of Chris Boucher, Neemias Queta, Luka Garza, and Xavier Tillman is going to be any good and win a lot of games. And I think they're just so vulnerable to a single injury for one of Jaylen Brown or Derek White. They might be the most injury vulnerable team in the league based on their lack of depth this year. So I'm saying they're not going to finish any higher than 11. I think at some point they might just pull the plug entirely and try to fall even further. I know there's all the rumors about Jason Tatum coming back early, but if they're not very good by January, what's the point? Give them the time to recover and rehab all the way. Don't rush them back. And yeah, I think they'll come back next year with a high pick and be terrifying again. And I think that's probably in their best interest. Number 12, I have the Chicago Bulls. Flirted with Charlotte ahead of them because I just hate this team. This team is going to be bad, and despite not trying to be bad, I think. Nikola Vucevic, I think we're pretty close to the precipice of him falling off pretty seriously. And I think, like, if the season was only made up of games in March, they might be the 5th seed, but that's not the case. And there are only like 20 games in March. And I think by then they're going to be pretty bad. I don't think Josh Giddey is good. I don't think Kobe White really drives winning basketball. I think Patrick Williams is bad. I think they're going to put a lot on the plate of Montes Puzelis, which he's cool and good, but he's a second-year guy. I don't know if that's going to be super effective for winning. Just the Bulls. Ugh. 13th, I have the Charlotte Hornets. Joke franchise, meme star player. They're going to be the worst defense in the NBA, probably the only center rotation that's worse than Boston's. I'll believe the Charlotte Hornets are serious when I see it. And a collection of a bunch of doughy white dudes they drafted on draft night. 5 rookies, by the way. Like, we saw what happened with the Raptors last year when you play that many rookies. You're not very good. I don't think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be the Charlotte Hornets. Number 14, the Wizards. The nerds can tell me all they want how fun this team is going to be. The novelty of Trey Johnson, though, taking all the shots, and Cam Whitmore putting up 22 points and 0.5 assists tonight, it's going to wear off real quick. They're going to stink. And then the Brooklyn Nets, I seriously think the worst record of all time is in play. That roster is miserable. The league is really good. They stink. And man, oh man, they're going to be incentivized to not want to win either. And no matter the magic Jordy Fernandez has to pull out, I just don't see it. They're going to be awful. They might win like 9 games this season, which will be very funny because the Brooklyn Nets are a joke franchise that deserves bad things. With that quick rattle through the playoffs, I would say, if we just go, Miami gets into the postseason as the 8th seed, Detroit gets in as the 7. I'll say Cleveland over Miami pretty comfortably. Again, the Knicks over Detroit pretty comfortably. Orlando beats the Raptors in like a 6-game or something like that. I'll say Milwaukee over Atlanta just because Giannis is incredible, so I go chalk. Then I'll say Cleveland over Milwaukee, although that could get kind of interesting if Giannis wants to go God mode. And then Knicks over Magic, Knicks over Cleveland, Knicks in the finals, and they lose to the Denver Nuggets. You heard it here first. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. Enjoy the return of Raptors basketball tonight. If you haven't yet, be sure to get your submissions in for the listener over-unders contest. The link is in the description of the podcast, and it's free to join, free to get your entries in, and the winner will get a pair of tickets to a game next season. So please do that. And of course, if you're in Hamilton or around the area, want to come in to watch Raptors Hawks tonight, Last Supper Books, 148 James Street North. I'll be hosting a little watch party there. Should be a lot of fun. Come hang out. We'd love to see you. And we'll be back again on Thursday with Katie Heindel talking about the season opener. Raptors Hawks tonight. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Buckets!